Redditors who work in retail, what are your worst "you can't make this crap up" stories? So, Target, we have a code yellow for missing kids. Whole team drops what they are doing and we all help. Usually child is found within minutes. One case, on a slow night, the missing boy, 10, could not be found. Parent is frantic and getting more frantic. Would he have gone to the car on his own, I offer? Which got me screamed at about how he would never and he's been kidnapped and I'm not taking things seriously. Well, he had gone out to the car on his own. Next story. Was working retail at Sam Goody's record store many years ago and training a young girl at the cash register. She was very quiet and shy. It was her first job ever and she was very, very nervous. An older gentleman came up to the counter with a cassette tape that he was very excited about. Apparently, he had been looking for it for quite some time and had finally found it at our store. In his excitement, as he spoke, his dentures popped out of his mouth, bounced across the counter, and hit this young trainee right in the waist. She let out a scream, threw her hands in the air, and jumped backwards about 5 feet. The old gentleman then yelled out, "Ah, fit!" reached across the counter, grabbed his dentures, and popped them right back in. The whole event took about 3 seconds. It was hilarious, but this young girl was just shaken like a leaf and in disbelief of what had just happened to her. It was hilarious. Next story. Worked customer service at well-known Superstore. A few times I had moments of just complete brain shutting down shock at some of the crap people tried to pull. The most memorable was coming back from break. I would go through all the clothing areas to avoid customers. I went around a corner and bumped into a lady in the shoe aisle with an armful of boxes. I helped her pick up the boxes that she dropped and went back to the service counter. About 3 minutes later, that same woman walked up, put the boxes on the counter, and said she'd like to return them. I kind of stopped and stared at her. I told her I just saw her bring them directly from the floor over to here. She repeated she wanted to return them. Well, I didn't get paid enough to argue, so I keyed in the code for a manager, made the return for her, like $200 on a gift card, and off she went. The manager in loss prevention got her before she made it out the door. Another time, 2 guys came in to pick up a MoneyGram. He showed a California license, to which I asked what he was doing all the way in Iowa. He told me he was on the run from the law. I just laughed and dismissed it as a joke. 20 minutes later, a guy in a Hawaiian shirt and cargo shorts cuts to the front of the line, puts a badge down, and tells me he's a U.S. Marshal. I told him I thought that guy was joking about being on the run, and the marshal says, "He actually told you that?" Anyway, they pulled me to speak with the store manager so he can let her know that they will be arresting the guy as soon as he leaves the store. I ask if I can watch, and the marshal says, "Sure, why not?" And the store manager tells me to get my ass back to work. Didn't even get to see it go down. So this is a video I can relate to, having worked fast food and customer service. One time, we had a customer eat a whole microwavable meal and then return the box and said, "I didn't like it. Can I get my money back?" And we had 3, 4 managers being like, "Dude, there's nothing in the box." He's like, "But I didn't like it though. Here's the box." The food isn't there, buddy. You can't. People are so dumb. Let me stop before. Anyway, next story. So my first job other than babysitting or casual household labor as a teenager was at an antiques store. Mostly I just came in after school to dust and vacuum, help with heavy lifting, etc. But if the owner had an errand, I was fully in charge. It was quite a nice job. One afternoon, a lady came into the shop. She brought her notebook and borrowed my measuring tape when she found a dining room table that suited her style. And then she says, "I would like to order this table, but 4 inches longer." Ma'am, we aren't sourcing our European antiques from a workshop, you know. I can refer you to someone who could build a reasonable facsimile to your specifications, but there's literally no way for me to order what you want. An absolute crap fit was thrown after I told her that. Apparently, she called my boss the next day. The boss suffered no fools, didn't need money, and only opened at the shop because her husband retired and boss didn't want to stay home with him all day. I don't know exactly what was said on that call, but I got a $20 slipped into my hand the way grandmothers do it when I got to work that afternoon. "Baby, you earned this for putting up with that old B word." And $20 was real money back in 1985. Next story. Best Buy. Lady comes in with a 10% off coupon and asks me how much it'll get her off an $80 camera. I explain $8, to which she is surprised and angrily picks out the $50 one. While ringing her up, she asks why the antenna is $45, and when I explain how 10% off works again, she replies, "I thought you said it was $8. Next story. I once accidentally locked a pregnant woman in the store to take my break. I was working the store in the mall all alone, and we just had a rush. Everyone cleared out. I locked the gate to take my dinner break. When I came back 15 minutes later, a security guard was trying to figure out how to get her out. Apparently, she was sitting in the fitting rooms, and I didn't realize it. She was so mad, naturally, and let me know she was going to complain to corporate. I called my manager after she left to own up to my mistake before she heard from the customer. Later, the customer called me after she calmed down and let me know she wasn't going to tell on me, and asked me to just please be more careful next time. Well, anyway, the manager let me go the next day due to my own admission. Next story. Two ladies were doing a bold shoplifting spree. City police were at every store exit, waiting for them to leave the premises. Store security was tracking them through the store. We were told to leave them totally alone if they came into our area. Sure enough, here they come into my area. One woman was pushing a stroller with a little boy in it, approximately 2 years old. The other one was pushing off these old-fashioned baby carriages, like from the 1920s, with a blanket thrown over it. I heard later that someone had asked her about her baby, and she said it had breathing problems and needed privacy, thus the blanket over the entire carriage. But they shopped all 3 floors of our store, filling up the carriage, any room in the stroller, and filling girdles under their clothes, getting physically larger the more time they spent in the store. They finally returned to their car with $5,000 plus worth of merchandise, and were stopped by the police. Rumor has it they even had 16 pairs of earrings stuffed into their underpants. The baby that has breathing problems was revealed to be a plastic baby doll. Next story. Not me, but a story from my sister who's not on Reddit. She worked at a craft store for her first job out of high school. One day, they had a bird in their store. No one could catch it. It would always fly around and perch on a high place in the store out of reach. It was literally there for a couple of days when it finally got too weak to fly very high anymore. My sister finally was able to approach it and offered it water, and it drank it out of a bottle cap. My sister then grabbed it and put it into a small cardboard box so it could rest and regain its strength for release. Well, she put the box in the break room and wrote on it, "Do not open, bird inside." Later that day, they were in the break room, and one of her coworkers walked in, opened the box, and released the bird again. My sister asked her why she opened the box, and she replied that she thought it was a prank or something. Thankfully, the bird was only confined to the break room, and my sister caught it again and immediately released it outside, and it flew away. And "do not open, bird inside" became a meme among her friends and coworkers. Emails with "do not open" attachments that was just a goofy bird picture or gif. Actual boxes with "do not open" on them that contained stuffed bird toys or bird figurines. She left that job some months later, but she left an impact. Next story. Had a lady come in disgusted at the state of the store. She was on her hands and knees looking under the racking. She left and came back with plastic bags, gloves, a mask, and cooking tongs. She proceeded to start pulling dust bunnies out from under the permanent racking. She then asked for a broom, to which I politely obliged. End of the day, store closing, I walked her out and thanked her for bringing this to our attention. Never saw her again. Manager called me an a-hole for letting her go on like that. Well, she wasn't bugging anyone, and she seemed calmer the more she did this. The whole thing went on for about 3 hours. Next story. In college, I worked for a locally owned dollar store. We had no public restroom, but there was a McDonald's across the street we always directed people to. One night, an elderly lady comes in asking if we had a restroom, and I told her no, and that McDonald's right across the street did. She just says okay and disappeared into one of the aisles. I get back to what I'm doing, and about a minute later, she left like her hair was on fire, checked the aisle, and yep, pissed right on our carpet floor. Next story. We had an employee whose daughter died. We sent her flowers, gave her time off, told her to come back when she was ready, etc. She then came back a few weeks later, working shortened hours with a support friend by her side. She soon got fired for letting the support friend use the services for free. A couple of months later, she came in as a customer, and her daughter that had died was sitting in the car playing on an iPad. We called her out immediately. It was awkward. Next story. Worked at a liquor store. Had a guy come in so drunk when he got there that he fell out of his lifted truck and bashed his face open on the curb. A customer came running in and said there's someone bleeding in the parking lot, so my manager and I went outside to check. He was absolutely hammered. No clue how he successfully drove there. Anyways, after getting blood all over me and my manager, he told us he wanted to sleep it off in his car. At noon on a Saturday at 95 degrees Fahrenheit. He got arrested. Edit. Another story. The gas station next to us got robbed. Not the usual holdup, no, this was an inside job. They came at 3 a.m. with a saw and cut out the back wall where the safe was bolted and hooked it up to a trunk and yanked that B word out and drove off. As far as I know, they never solved it. Next story. 20 years back, I was working at Walmart and someone asked me to hold a ladder so they could change the pricing on the sign. This was suspended over the photo center. Well, as he went to change a number, the hook or whatever holding it up let go. The entire sign, made out of heavy metal and plastics, smashed me right in the face. Somehow missed my nose, and I was left with an inch gash above my upper lip and a tear on the right side of my nose where it's like connected. I have scars now. Then the HR person asked me to come in a few days later to sign paperwork so I could return to work when I was better. And it was a return to work form. They bait and switched me and had me back working several days later with stitches still in my face and my lips swollen like a golf ball. F Walmart. I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I really hope there's a part 2 where OP sues Walmart and wins or something like that, because we read a lot of stories that involve HR and a lot of the times they're not positive, and this is one of them. Anyway, I'm going to Target. Who wants to come with me? Next story. So I worked as a supervisor in a 24-hour convenience store. One night, a co-worker's mom came in drunk and threatened to slice 2 of our throats because her daughter was a terrible worker who needed to be prompted to do even the most simple of daily tasks, so she had started getting told off frequently. The daughter quit the following day, and her mother was permanently trespassed. Next story. I worked at an Aeropostale at a local mall in college. Woman brought in recently purchased panties for return, pulled them out of the bag, and laid them on the register. All of them had been perioded on. Blood. I was speechless and completely frozen. She broke the silence by triumphantly pulling out the receipt from the bag, saying, "Oh, I didn't even realize this was in here." Receipt had period blood on it as well. I switched back to stockroom duty after that. Next story. Worked at Barnes & Noble. 2 real bro dudes wearing my old high school lacrosse uniforms came in. They're talking loud, laughing loud. They head back to use the bathroom. Well, I happened to go in about a minute later. To the wet, lotiony sounds of these 2 dudes in one stall aggressively whacking each other off, grunting and crap. 5 minutes later, they leave, talking loud, laughing loud. Next story. I worked at a retail store at the mall for a winter break in college. They are known for selling bachelorette party stuff and crap for your dorm room. They had recently been bought out by a larger company and changed their inventory system. Whenever a product was sold, they would ship 4 more of the exact product. The problem was that they had a sale on lava lamps just before Thanksgiving. In the weeks leading up to Christmas, we had lava lamps stacked floor to ceiling in the back room. We didn't want them there, and we also didn't want to sell more too. I had to go back to college after the breakup, so I'm not sure if/when the inventory system was fixed and what they ended up doing with hundreds of lava lamps. Next story. I worked in a garden center for a few years. There was a lady who would come in once a year to drop hundreds on plants and plant accessories. She always refused the free delivery, so it was down to me somehow to fit all of that crap into her Fiat 500. The boot was loaded with compost and the rest of the car looked like a plant pot on wheels. Took nearly an hour each time. It would have been so much simpler and safer for her to just take advantage of free delivery. Next story. While scanning groceries, I hear a loud commotion, which included a shopping cart colliding into the service desk and 2 people rushing out of the store. My manager comes around shaking her head, and I couldn't help but ask what happened. Well, apparently someone stole a display model of a microwave and tried to return it, saying that they bought a faulty microwave but didn't have a receipt or even the box it came in. My manager had heard about the theft earlier in the day and squinted her eyes at the story about how this microwave had no cord and was extremely light to pick up, leading her to ask straight out if they were the ones who stole the microwave, hence them storming out of the store pretty quickly. Next story. I work as an optician and quite recently had a client come in for a checkup at the optometrist's for sight. His eyesight was about -3.50 and -8. Those who wear glasses know that this is bad news. He shrugged and said, will do. Been working as a truck driver with this vision and I see great. He doesn't wear glasses. Me and my colleagues thought about asking for his work schedule to know on which days we shouldn't leave the house. Next story. I was a manager of a Toys R Us electronics section. So many crazy stories. Off the top of my head, at the end of the night, I'd have to print out the console count. How many we had at the start of the day, how many we sold, how many left. The list had video game consoles, tablets, iPads, iPods, and cameras. I would do my count, call over the storefront manager to double check, then the SFM would unlock the electronic closet to finish the count. The closet had at least 2 security cameras, and you had to be watched while in there as well. We were hemorrhaging Nintendo 3DS and Apple products. My count would look like day started with 37 Nintendo 3DSs, 0 sold today, 22 remaining. But the only people with the key to the electronics closet were the SFM and store manager. Well, turns out the store manager would turn off the cameras, sneak into the closet, and stuff his jacket. Watched him get escorted out by the police and never saw him again. Then the second story, on Black Friday, 2 new hires worked the front counter together. With every purchase, they would ring a $5 gift card with the order and pocket it. They were both escorted out by the police around 4 a.m., and my manager said it was over $1,000 each in gift cards. And third story, a group of guys casually walked over to the sports section, ripped a bunch of basketballs out of their packaging, and ran out at max speed holding as many as they could. I have so many more stories. I had a friend one time tell me that a friend of his went to Walmart or something like that. It was probably Walmart, and he asked to see one of the Xboxes. And he said, "Hey, can I see the display one? I want to see how heavy it is." And the employee was like, "Yeah, sure, dude." He snatched it and ran out the store, apparently. That's what I was told. Dude booked it. My good grief. But anyway, next story. So, was working at a major hi-fi retailer in TV stereo sales. I had an older customer come in with her daughter and buy a cheap TV/DVD player combo. She haggled as hard as she could. Just to try and get rid of her, I gave her a really sweet deal. Probably made about $3 commission off the item. She then proceeded to harass myself and other staff members for months, claiming that the DVD player built into the TV was scratching her DVDs. She demanded we replace all of her DVDs and give her a brand new one. She brought in a few DVDs as proof, and it was clear as day she had scratched them herself. Really brutal scratches. After much deliberation, we replaced the TV, but only with one condition. I would have to go to her house and install it for her. And it was like something out of a horror movie. She had the worst house on a nice street, and it was filled with rubbish and stuffed animals. And I felt like, this is it. She's gonna murder me. I got it installed so fast that I'm pretty sure I didn't do it correctly. A month later, I got transferred to stores, and thankfully a mate of mine took my place. So when she came back in looking for me, he told her I had quit and didn't work for the company anymore. She then demanded my phone number. That was 12 years ago, and I still get the ick thinking about it. Next story. I worked for a major cell company for way longer than I should have. The amount of crazies I deal with on a daily basis isn't something the average person should comprehend. People coming in pissed that we shut their phone off even though it hadn't been paid in months. Upset we wouldn't replace the phone they lost or broke for free. A lot of physical violence threatened towards me because I didn't know the password for their apps, bank accounts, miscellaneous logins, company servers. I had one particular guy that swore his phone was hacked. Wouldn't take any answer we gave him that it wasn't happening. I came up with this bright idea of telling him he needed to swap his SIM card every 3,000 minutes to keep it secure. It got him out of the store, but he sure did come back religiously every few months to get it changed. Next story. I was a big box store cashier in high school, ringing up stuff at the register closest to the door. I hear commotion and turn and see a guy, covered in blood, pushing a cart with a TV and a crock pot, and he's running towards the door. Our asset protection security guy is giving chase, and he tackles him right by the front door. They fight, and the guy's arm is just spewing blood all over the floor right at the store exit. The TV he was stealing was a display model on the top shelf, and he had sliced his arm open on the metal shelves when pulling the TV down. Security gets a hold of the guy. Some random customer goes over and beats the thief with her purse and yells at him. Police are called. They arrest him. The blood spill meant we had to call a professional hazmat cleaner, and they came and did all of their cleaning while the store stayed open for business. Everyone who got blood on them had to get blood work done to make sure they didn't contract anything. It was a fun day that day. Next story. OMG, some of these are so terrible. Mine is not as bad, but it was gross to me and completely baffling. I worked in a store with display beds. I think there were 5. People would let their kids play on them, so I had to remake them every night after closing. At least once a week, I would find a pair of women's panties which had already been worn. The beds were out in the middle of everything, clearly visible in the crowded, brightly lit store. I have never been able to figure out how or why anyone would leave panties there. I guess it would only take a minute to stuff them under the covers, $100, but why? I was supposed to put them in the lost and found, but I always put them in the garbage instead. Next story. Worked in a middle-class British supermarket chain about 10 years ago. Saturday morning shift, not overly busy, but plenty of footfall. Then our chilled dairy section was more or less opposite the tills, when I started hearing raised voices from the chilled section. Turns out an elderly lady, roughly 70 years old or so, had collapsed face first into the cheese chiller, lying there face down in a mix of butters and non-dairy spreads. Fairly serious stuff though, CPR being given by bystanders and staff. I didn't get involved directly, only 17 or 18 at the time, only keeping other customers from rubbernecking and giving the old lady some dignity when I hear a large disapproving huff from this middle-aged woman standing behind me. Think middle-class Karen. Hair up in a bun, designer leather jacket, designer bag, designer boots, face butchered by so much filler and Botox it was giving Michael Jackson a run for his cash, and with that quintessential entitled British degrading tone. In my nicest customer service voice explained that there was an ongoing medical emergency and this aisle is closed. Then she huffs again, getting impatient, replies in the most condescending of tone, "Well, I don't have all day to wait. Go and get me these things," as if I were her servant. I again politely inform her I couldn't, as the products she wanted were directly where this elderly lady was. So she huffs and snarks and proceeds, without any hesitation, to push me out of the way with her trolley, push her way past another member of staff, parks her trolley next to the woman being given CPR, reaches over her and the staff giving her CPR, and grabs 2 blocks of cheese. Then she puts them in her trolley and trots off like nothing was happening, oblivious to what was happening. I was speechless, in disbelief on how cold people could be. Retail, never again. Next story. I used to work in an Apple store, and I get an appointment with someone who has forgotten some passwords and needs help with their account. Simple enough. I meet with them, and the guy is some sort of greasy-looking anime guy, nothing really out of the ordinary. He hands me a notebook full of smudged red ink and says it's his notebook of passwords. I'm looking at it, and all the writing is smudged and illegible. I ask him casually why it is all smudged, and he responds with, "Oh yeah, I wrote it with my blood." What? I'm sorry? All the writing? It's with my blood. Next story. Worked in receiving for Sears in 2008. This woman comes in one night to pick up a grill that she had bought and had assembled at the store. It was a liability for us to tie a purchase down for a customer, but we could offer them twine to do so themselves. She backs up to the loading dock. I load her grill onto her truck bed and insist on giving her some twine to tie it down. But she says that she'll be fine and that she doesn't live that far away anyway. All right, cool, I did my job. I show up the next morning and one of the managers comes running through the back looking for me, shouting, "Where the F is he? Is he here yet?" And she finally finds me and starts yelling, "Did you load a grill last night? Why didn't you tie it down?" And I told her that yes, I did load a grill. And no, I did not tie it down because we're not allowed to. But I kept offering the customer something to tie it down on their own, and they refused. And she's so mad that I did what I was supposed to and didn't do anything wrong. Yells at me that their grill fell off the back of the truck on the highway and shattered. Next story. Was working the cash register at a card shop. 3 kids each about 15-ish years old walk in and buy a booster pack each. The last one pays with cash but is about 25 cents short. He lets out the disgusted teenager sigh and asks, "Can I have a quarter?" And I was confused and told him no. We then have a long conversation about how he needs the quarter to pay for the booster pack. I tell him that's not how a store works. He finally says, "Sigh, fine, I'll just use my credit card." This kid fights with me over a quarter for 3 minutes when he had $20 in store credit the whole time. He bought his booster pack, opened it, and dropped the wrapper on the floor in front of me. Next story. Worked at Walmart for over a decade. The 3 memorable stories I have. First, I worked nights and was stacking food onto a cart so I could stock. Some guy asks my name. I tell him since it was clearly visible on my name tag and because I'm kind of dumb. Then he asks if I want him to be my man. I told him no because I had a man. And he told me he had a woman and he'd take care of both of us, he said. Told him no thanks and took off to do my job. Then 3 days later, there's an angry woman looking for me by name because apparently I hit on her man. I didn't wear my name badge for about 3 years after that. Then the second story. Power went out in the section of town the store was in. They had us raid sporting goods for headlamps and flashlights and made us stock anyway. Store manager called someone by the wrong name that night and almost got a box knife in his heart. And 3, the lawnmowers were stacked too high in Garden Center and were apparently touching the overhead heaters in Garden Center, and they smoldered till they caught fire. We noticed on our lunch break and had an extended lunch when the FD cut the flames. Next story. Worked for a niche grocery store across the street from a retirement community. This one old dude cuts a turd while walking, shakes it out of his pant legs, and then keeps right on walking. Then, old lady in a mobility scooter intentionally ran over my manager's foot and stopped to gloat about it. She actually shouted, "Gotcha!" And then someone blast painted the entire lower half of the wall behind the toilet with crap. Manager had to clean it herself because everyone she tried to assign to it noped out. Good times. Good times. Part of me misses that job. Next story. I started working when my store was very understaffed. So understaffed that the managers were doing cashier work. I had to use the restroom once in the middle of my shift, and apparently while I was there, some Karen got in a snit with the manager at the register. So I come out of the bathroom to catch the tail end of the argument. Important to note here is that the managers and cashiers wore different colored shirts, and it was just me and a bunch of managers that day. So I come out from the back in a shirt that is colored differently from everyone else at the counter, and the lady looks on to me. She starts lecturing me, a cashier, about keeping my employees in line, making sure they respect customers, all that jazz. She keeps telling me to discipline my managers, in particular, my boss, who she was arguing with. Finally, she runs out of air and leaves in a huff. I look at my boss, he looks at me, and I say, "She thought I was the manager," and we both just bust out laughing. And the lady comes back inside, screaming about us thinking she was a joke. We de-escalate, I apologize, and she leaves. But I never forgot about that. Next story. I once had a customer demand that Apple cover the repair of her cat pee laptop. I tried explaining that this was considered a biohazard and wouldn't be able to be repaired. She would have to buy a new one. But she just wouldn't take no for an answer and demanded that we replace it for free. After all, it wasn't her fault, right? It was the cat. My manager jumped in and is trying to explain the same thing, and at some point after we're going nowhere with this customer, my manager asks her why she feels that this is something that Apple should cover, and she acted so offended at this question. That up to the point we had been providing good customer care, but somehow we crossed a line. So bizarre. A day later, we get her written feedback about how rude the manager was and how we crossed a line when we asked her that. No idea. Also, in positive intent, I opened the bottom of her MVP and the pee had crystallized and fully stunk up the repair room. Next story. A customer came up to me holding women's stockings and flats and asked me if he could get a second opinion. I assumed he wanted a woman's opinion on something for his wife, so I said sure. He explained that he had lost a bet and had to dress up as a woman for work. His friends had even bought him a dress. He said that he was starting to get cold feet and asked me if I would go through with it if I was in his shoes. I told him that at this point it was too late to back out, which he seemed disappointed by but still accepted my answer. He then asked if I thought it would be okay if he changed in the restrooms, and after I gave him an answer, he went on his way. Next story. My son works at a truck shop. They only ever have one person working at a time. A couple of weeks ago, he had a human trafficking OD incident in the parking lot. As he was outside on the phone with 911 trying to deal with it, a line formed inside of the store. He got screamed at for not being at the register. Then last night, my husband and I went to said truck stop to get some gas and say hello. The cops were rolling in just about the same time. Apparently, there was a hit and run. He came outside to meet the cops and they greeted him with his first name. We go inside and I ask him, how often does this happen? And he says, "Mom, I'm on a first name basis with the cops. What do you think?" He really should write all the crap down that he's seen. It's truly nuts. Next story. I work at a Subway, so the fast food equivalent. Important context, my store operates on a military base, meaning we do 3 to 6 times more business than an average Subway on any given day. Our lunch rush might be 150 units for the peak hour, whereas a normal store might make 35 to 60 depending on the store. A few months ago, we had a guy come in just before the start of lunch rush and began his order while it was still slow. After completing it, he began to order another sandwich. Then another, then another. The line was beginning to form. Then he reached sandwich number 13, meaning that by this point, the entire store is full of people waiting, 50 plus in a theme park style queue, and all 13 sandwiches lined up on the cutting boards. His 14th was his last. When he finished that, he got over to the veggie side and had no clue what he wanted on any of them. Each one was for a different person. It is worth mentioning that this was what I will delicately refer to a somewhat challenged individual. In this situation, that meant constantly trailing off and getting distracted throughout the entire ordering process, significantly extending things. After multiple texting and phone call sessions and some serious study of his disorganized write-down sheet, he manages to complete the vegetables. The line is out the door by this point. He comes to the end of the line where we're about halfway done bagging his sandwiches, only for him to start angrily telling us that each individual name written on the stickers is what he wants on the sandwiches, and our 1 through 14 numbers just weren't enough. I can't remember any of the specific names, but every single name was an extremely weird out-of-pocket name, like something that could never possibly be in a birth certificate. I think one might have been Smiley. Once that is finally done, he approaches the register. Then, I crap you not, this is the can't make this up part, this MF pulls out a rubber-banded stack of credit cards as thick as a deck of playing cards and informs us that he intends to pay for each and every sandwich individually, one to each card. No, they were not in the order he placed them. Ultimately, this douche clown cost us quite a lot of business in the form of walkouts and took about 30 minutes to move through the system. Our lunch rush was a horrific nightmare because of how backed up we were without ever having had a fair chance to get off the ground. So I implore you, do not do this. Every aspect of this could and should have been done better. He should have had everything written in order. He should have informed us of the quantity of his order to begin with. He should have had the vegetables written out properly. He should have numbered the sandwiches on his paper so he didn't need names. He should have paid with one card and had everyone PayPal him. It's not fair to put all of that on us and completely train wreck the next 4 hours of 7 people's shifts because you're too lazy to plan. End of rant. Next story. I work at a gas station where we card every single customer and will deny sale without it. A guy came in saying he left his ID at home and that he had a picture of it though. I denied him as he proceeded to tell me his brother had just passed away and the store down the street accepted his photo yesterday. While trying to show me the photo of his ID, he scrolled to a photo of his brother in his casket and he still did not get his cigarettes. Ooh, this one struck a chord with me. I used to work at a store that sold cigarettes, and I came in just as it was required to start carding everybody. So customers would be like, well, you never had to do that before. And I'm like, well, we do it now. And there would be people, for whatever reason, to say to me, oh, well, I live across the street. Do I still gotta card you? Yes! What does the vicinity of your domicile have to do with anything? Get your stupid cancer sticks and get out of my face. I hate you.
No, I can't operate without my Newports. Oh, my Marlboro.
Shut up. Anyway, next story. So, everybody over here sharing stories about rude or disruptive customers, so I'll do the opposite. I actually liked retail because in spite of the impossible customers, the cordial ones made it worth it. Once at Home Depot, I had a couple of older dudes come in. When I asked them, how could I help you, gentlemen? They gasped dramatically and said, well, nothing, now that you called us that awful word. So I follow up with, oh, I'm sorry, how can I help you, effers? And they laughed. I laughed, and we had a blast for the 40 seconds it took to help them. Next story. I used to work for Rite Aid, and boy howdy did I have some stories to share. And I have a bunch of stories, but here are some of my favorites. One, this lady approached a guy who was maybe in his early 20s and asked him if he wanted to do drugs with her in the bathroom. They did not know each other apparently, so he says yes, they both go into the bathroom. These bathrooms were the single-person use kind with just a toilet, urinal, sink, soap, paper towels, TP, and a door that locks up. So they do the drugs. He does not ask what drugs he just took. After a bit, he collapses in the medicine aisle. Turns out he OD'd. As the manager on duty and the pharmacist call the cops and perform CPR, the lady flees off into the night. Story number 2, this homeless lady would loiter outside the main doors asking for change and occasionally offering sexual favors. As per company policy, we could not kick her off the premises unless customers started complaining. Well, this one night, a regular known for having seizures was walking towards the door when she confronted him. I was ringing out another couple of people when someone came in telling us that someone was having a seizure out front. So we get on the phone with 911 and the pharmacist and I head out front to help him. He was fine, just a minor episode but nothing serious. EMS knew him by name and got him situated. When the pharmacist and I asked him what had happened, and he said, that fat homeless lesbian stole my wallet. Yeah, apparently she approached him asking for money, and when he declined, she became hostile. That triggered his seizure, and as he was seizing, she ran off with his wallet. Story number 3, this guy came from the bar across the street wearing camo pants, a shirt, and had a 6-foot stuffed gorilla on his shoulders. He walked in, looked at the security camera, and started quoting scripture. I was not on duty this night and don't know any more information, unfortunately. 4, this one lady came in to use Western Union. For y'all that may know, Western Union is a money transfer service, so we had a kiosk that usually didn't work and we couldn't fix it because it was a third-party device. So we would have to call Western Union and wait for a representative. But we waited over a year and nobody showed up. But that's not the point of the story though. So this lady comes in to use the kiosk. You pick up the phone, it automatically dials, you talk to either a helpful lady, a guy who doesn't speak clear English, or an automated system. You get the code and take it to the cashier, who then, if they have enough money in their drawer, completes the transaction and gives or takes the money, depending on if you're sending or receiving. The machine was not working for this lady though, and she was getting pissed. Understandably so. Well, she was wearing this tight spaghetti strap outfit and had a bra on that had to have been a size or two too small. Her Tongala hoogers were nearly spilling out of the top like when you fill up a glass of water to the brim, but the water doesn't break the surface tension. Well, anyway, she started stomping around and jumping, but somehow those huge lahongers on her chest didn't budge. To this day, I don't know how they defied the laws of physics and gravity, because they should have easily popped out. Then story 5, our theft prevention guy was in. Because we were in a bad neighborhood and were prone to being robbed, he was watching the cameras and catching people left and right. It was wild. Well, he caught this one guy. Apparently he was either trying to steal a lot or said something to piss off our TP guy, but next thing I know, our TP guy tells me he'll be back and follows the guy down to the nearest Family Dollar, where our TP guy then warns the Family Dollar employees how this guy was trying to steal from us. It was so based. And 6, finally, my favorite interaction. I was ringing out a customer when this lady walks in and interrupts the transaction to ask a question, despite the line of people waiting and the overall rudeness of doing that crap. She asks me, "Do y'all sell ice?" And I say, "Yes, we do." Along the wall, all the way back, last cooler on the left. I gesture towards the wall and back to where the coolers are at, and I say that. She says, "All right, where's that?" All I could do in that moment was repeat myself, but slower. And after she walked off, the customer I was cashing out shared a confused glance with me. I don't know how I could have been clearer. It's right there. I pointed to it. Oh, customer service and fast food and such. I remember one time working at McDonald's, this lady asked for a 4-piece chicken nuggets made fresh. That's it. That's all. For those of you who don't know, you can request your fast food made fresh, but it takes longer, okay? But it's fresh and it's hot. So anyway, she waits the 3, 4, 5 minutes, stands by the counter, gets her nuggets. I'm like, "Here you go." She eats them within 30 seconds, burps, and then leaves. I'm like, what was the point of that? It's fast food. That was just one thing. I remember one guy asked me what a Big Mac was, and I'm like, it's the most famous sandwich in the world. What? How do you not know what a Big Mac is? And then finally, I had this one lady came in, and she asked for a quarter pounder with cheese. And then I give it to her, it's slow, and she's like, "Man, I've been waiting for this." And I'm like, "Why's that?" And she says to me, "Well, I just got out of prison, so this is the first thing I wanted." That was so funny. Oh, I still remember that. But anyway, folks, feel free to comment your stories. Thank you all so much for watching, commenting. Have a really good day, and